right, everyone. Welcome in the Full Court Trap podcast coming at you here on this Monday evening. We're a little bit shorthanded, but that isn't stopping me from me and Dylan Durbin, for being here for everyone and all of your college basketball needs. Durb, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. The full court trap ain't so full today. Uh,
It's a 1-1 zone today.
in fact,
1-1 zone. But we
but
did just shoot some solo content with our man Blake Smith. He had to go for some other reasons, but we'll be pushing that content out later this week.
we did, and I'm also in one of the other preview vids, so check in on that one.
Yes, sir. All right, Derby, you ready to talk some ball?
Always ready.
Always ready. Let's do it. So we're going to introduce a new segment here today on the Full Court Trap. It is named the Trap Takeaways. So we obviously just had a big weekend of college basketball. A lot of performances, a lot of results that stood out. Headlines, AP poll just came out today as well, if you want to lump that into all of the action from the past weekend. But Derb, I'll start with you. Out of everything that's gone on in the last couple of days in college basketball, and for the folks out there looking for a more in-depth reaction to all of the action that went on, we had instant reactions for Kentucky's upset loss, the Texas 22-point comeback, and obviously the Auburn game against Tennessee and Houston versus Kansas. So be sure to check out those videos. But Derb, out of everything that happened this weekend, what was your biggest takeaway from everything that went on?
Somehow Kansas moving up in the AP poll. No, it wasn't necessarily a horrible showing by Kansas because Houston is a good team, but I don't see how you blow a 6-point lead with like 15 seconds left and end up losing the game and then still manage to go up. Oh, this is also a home loss if anybody didn't realize that. So I understand, some losses and stuff. Maybe you don't drop them, but moving up was certainly a decision on the voters' part.
Yeah, you lead perfectly into my biggest takeaway of the weekend. It involves the team that Kansas played. I think it's time to label the Houston Cougars as a national title contender because that game, it absolutely blew me away the way they were able to win it because we look at Kelvin Sampson's teams and the brand of basketball that he plays is more of a scrappy, defensive, physical kind of set the tone when it comes to the way that program operates. But in this one, I mean, double overtime, obviously it's going to be a more high-scoring game, but 92-86, and you win in Allen Fieldhouse, which is a place where Kansas, I believe, there was some stat that was thrown out. It was a really big one, but they'd only lost like one game when leading at halftime at Allen Fieldhouse, and a lot of wins as compared to the lone loss. So the magnitude of that win, if you're Houston, it sets you alone atop the Big 12, undefeated still. You got to be happy if you're a Houston fan. I think this puts them in a much higher spot with me than I would have had them coming out of non-conference when we were worried about them a little bit.
Yeah, they had that bit of I don't know if you'd say rough start, but it definitely wasn't the best. And now they've won like 9 games in a row at this point?
I believe so, yes.
Okay,
I'm going to double check that to be sure, but I do believe it's at 9 games currently. Yeah, 9 games.
Yeah, 9 games with at least a couple ranked wins thrown in there. I mean, that's a heck of a resume builder right there.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that encouraged me, too, is we've always talked about here how they lost Jamal Shedd last year, who was a big bucket getter for them. And it looks like in this game they found a go-to guy, and it's a guy in the paint there with Jawan Roberts because he was taking Hunter Dickinson and Flory Badunga to school in the paint. He was getting those hook shots, post moves. It was automatic every time they went to him. And Emmanuel Sharp, he had a big shot to get the game down to 3, and then Malik Wilson ties the game to send it into double overtime. They came back from down 6 once in regulation and then again in overtime. And that speaks a lot to the mental toughness of that team as well. That's the kind of championship DNA that you look for, a team that's in a hostile environment. Things can't seem to be going right, and they find a way to overcome what's a relatively talented Kansas team. I know you have your thoughts on Kansas and this overall roster build. I mean, you just called them out for moving up in the poll. You didn't think that was very warranted, but
no.
Am I too far off here? Do we think that Houston is starting to emerge into that conversation with the best of the best in terms of Final Four upside, national title upside?
No, I mean, I definitely think they're up there. I mean, obviously, you know me, in the history of the full court trap, I'm a well-known Kansas hater this year. But they still are a very good team, and for Houston to go on the road and win that, and not only just win it, but to be able to respond to the adversity they did and continue just to, survive in advance, keep on winning, that's a great sign for them.
Yeah, it's very encouraging. That was a great basketball game as well. I will note, because Blake cannot be here with us, he did plan on being it originally. His trap takeaway for the week was the Vanderbilt Commodores. They're ranked in the poll for the first time in a decade. They're coming off the Kentucky win, where really they just out-toughed Kentucky and made plays down the stretch and put Kentucky in shambles turnover-wise the whole game. Derb, I know we had eyes on that one. What do you think about the Doors and that before we move on from the takeaways here?
That one was a weird one. I didn't get to watch all of the game, but I got to watch some good chunks of it. And I swear, every time I turned it on, Kentucky just looked uncomfortable. Like it's just like Vanderbilt seemed like they was being more physical, creating havoc. I don't know how many turnovers Kentucky ended up having, but it had to be at least pushing 20, if it wasn't
Yeah,
20.
it was. I'm going to take a look at the box score here. It was getting close to there. Lamont Butler had a really decent amount just by himself. It was a bad performance. They had 17 turnovers, so close to 20.
Yeah, it's a what was it? Vandy was just wreaking havoc in dang near every way possible. It's
Yeah.
and this is coming off of the big win they had versus Tennessee last week, and just they're stringing quality wins together, and that's something you usually can't say about a Commodores team.
Yeah, no, Mark Byington, he's got them moving in the right direction. Me and Blake have a video coming out later about the overall job he's done there. Vandy, they deserve their own recognition in a separate video, but we'll move on from the trap takeaways for now and go ahead and get into what's sure to be a great week of college basketball. We'll save the weekend preview for Friday, but looking through this Monday to Friday slate, we do have some games tonight that we won't go super in depth on because our recording is probably going to be coming out as these games are going on. NC State's going to be playing Duke at Cameron Indoor. I imagine we expect a Duke thrashing there.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. But you know what?
Yeah,
I mean not UNC. NC State's got some black magic going on over there from last year. Still, I feel like.
that's
So,
true.
but yeah,
And
I would fully expect another Cooper Flag legacy game and the easy Duke win.
yeah, I'm starting to think Duke's going to be running through conference play undefeated at the rate they're going. We'll see how that pans out. And then a late one at 10:30 tonight for all the people that are staying up in the wee hours of the morning for this one, because that's when it'll be most likely concluding. Iowa State's traveling to Arizona. That's a tricky matchup there for Iowa State. We've talked at length about this team. We think they're national title good, players all over that roster. And this is going to be it's a tricky spot, like I'm saying. I mean, Arizona, they don't have the results necessarily, but they're not bad either. Tommy Lloyd, he's run a pretty solid program there. Caleb Love, I mean, he is kind of what he is at this point in his career. When he gets hot, you can't stop him, but more often than not, it can be a little bit inefficient, and he's kind of the catalyst of that team. So are we expecting the Cyclones to get a little bit of a stunner here, maybe Arizona, or we think they take care of business?
I can see it being a close game, but I think Iowa State is pretty easily the better team. So I would
Yeah.
expect them to win, but I wouldn't necessarily be stunned one way or another. But if I was to follow my heart, it would say Iowa State pretty easily.
Yeah, the spread, Vegas, they may know something we don't because they actually favor Arizona by 2.5 right now. And who
Hey,
knows?
listen, last time I bet against Arizona when they was the favorite, they beat all over West Virginia. So
Yep. They are 9-1 at home this year as well, so we'll keep an eye on that. They lead the league as well, the Big 12, in fast break points per game. They average around 14, so they're definitely going to want to get out there and play fast. So we'll see if Iowa State can kind of counteract that tempo with the own style of basketball that Otzelberger likes to play over there. Really tough, grind it out, find a way to win. But moving into the games that we're going to have a little bit more time to talk more in depth about here, and we'll start with Tuesday, which I think is probably the highlight of the week before we head into the weekend. The number 12 Kentucky Wildcats travel to Knoxville and take on the number 8 Tennessee Volunteers. Derb, this is a really pivotal game when it comes to the SEC standings. if you're Kentucky, because they've dug themselves a little bit of a hole here with the Georgia and now Vanderbilt loss. Didn't really expect that one to come. So, what are your keys to the game here? What do you think Kentucky's going to have to do if they want to pull out a win, or is Tennessee just going to be too much on their home court for Kentucky to overcome?
I could very see it. I could very easily see it being the Tennessee's a little too much to overcome. But if I was to say the way that Kentucky goes in there and beats them is they make everybody but Chaz Lanier be the one to beat them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if he's not scoring at least 15 plus, I feel like you got to like Kentucky's odds in that situation.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that would be worth noting is we don't know the status of Andrew Carr as of this recording, sitting here at Monday at about 8 o'clock. He didn't play in the Vanderbilt game, last minute decision there. Pope kind of alluded in the press conference. He said that they were going to try and rest him a little bit for a couple of weeks, and then he corrected himself to say a couple of days. So it feels like there may be something going on there. Kirk Risa, it remains unknown with him. I think the speculation is he may be taking a medical red shirt and coming back next year, but hopefully he comes back because Kentucky needs somebody to fill that backup point guard role for Lamont Butler, who's playing hurt right now as well, a shoulder injury, his dad tweeted out. But, I mean, this is really going to be the ultimate conflicting styles matchup here. Tennessee, they have pretty much the best defense in the country by all metrics. And Kentucky, I think that their offense has taken a little bit of a hit lately, but they're still lingering around there in the top five in terms of efficiency metrics and whatnot. Tennessee's defense per game, the average, they allow 58 points, 36% from the field, and 26%, or excuse me, 25% from three. So if you're Mark Pope looking at this Derb, Kentucky, we know the brand of basketball they like to play. It's very offensive centric, tempo, not really half court set related. So it seems like this is going to be a bit of a challenge to
Yeah,
overcome because
yeah,
Tennessee's slowed down everybody.
yeah. The only really concern, well, I'm not gonna say the only concern, but Tennessee, they are a very physical and defensive oriented team. And Kentucky's had their moments where they've responded well to physicality, and they've also had their moments when they just fell apart with it. So I'm not really sure what team is going to show up there tomorrow night, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think really what this is going to come down to, if you're Kentucky, is you can't let Tennessee settle into the way that they want the game to flow. You gotta get your sets going. You got to get the ball moving quick. You got to find a way to get your go-to guys like Jackson Robinson and Otega Oweh going early, because if they get stunned by that Tennessee defense, it might be a little bit hard. And I don't know
Yeah,
about you.
yeah.
Oh,
I
go
don't. I
ahead.
don't. I don't think this can be a 50-52 kind of game, or the kind of games
No.
Tennessee likes to play.
No, that if it falls into that category, then Tennessee's going to win this game pretty handily, in my opinion. But this is really kind of a hard one to get a grip on because I do think that Andrew Carr's status is important. If he doesn't play, and I'm Mark Pope, I think I'm rolling out a two big man lineup with Brandon Garrison and Amari Williams because Igor Milicic stands at 6'10 and Felix Okpara 6'11. Uh, Ansley Almanor, he's kind of an undersized guy to play the four, which was the role he was assigned in the Vandy game. And I mean, that's a game where he could kind of fit into that role because Vandy's
Yeah.
more of a smaller team, but I don't think that's going to work in this one tomorrow night.
No, I will give him credit though. He did play well in those minutes that he played. But
Yeah.
yeah, and like one thing I don't think a lot of people, I guess, probably thought about, when Carr originally came out as being injured, is how big of an impact he plays as far as when he catches the ball at the top of the post and passes it back over, and vice versa and all that. When you move up, when you mess up with your ball rhythm and all that kind of stuff, it messes with everything.
Yeah, it really does. So I guess before we move on, give me your winner for this matchup, and what do you think is it's going to ultimately come down to? We've alluded to some of the themes that might dominate this game, but what do you think will ultimately be the outcome here tomorrow night?
Do I let bias come through, or do I try to?
Hey, freedom of speech, baby. This podcast, you can say whatever you want.
My heart, well, my brain is telling me Tennessee's probably going to win this one.
Yep.
But for some reason, Obviously this is a new coach, new team, that kind of stuff. But for some reason, Kentucky has managed a way to somehow win in Thompson bowling over the last couple of years.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see them pull
Yeah.
something out either. Like a 79-72 game, something like that.
So you're going with Kentucky here, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we'll go with it.
Okay. I am unfortunately going the opposite direction. I think Tennessee's going to win this game pretty handily. I think
Well,
it. What are you thinking?
I was just saying, well, one of the two of us has got to be right.
Yeah, one of the two. I think that Tennessee's physicality and the defensive ability is just going to be too much. With
Well,
Carr being an unknown right now, I think it's just a safe bet to go with Tennessee.
yeah, I think a lot of it really does depend on Carr. Yeah, if Carr doesn't play, I could very easily see Tennessee trying to run away with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that maybe a 10-point Tennessee win is in the cards here. I mean, we'll see. I think it's going to be a quality game, but I think Tennessee's just going to be too much down the stretch, especially if Kentucky's shorthanded. But we'll find out tomorrow at 7 o'clock on ESPN. But more matchups on Tuesday night. We got a big slate. Wake Forest, they're traveling to Louisville. Louisville is continuing to climb their way up the ranks. They're sitting at number 21 right now, and they're hosting a great Wake Forest team in the Yum Center that almost gave Duke a scare this weekend. That was one of Duke's lone tests recently, a team that really pushed them. So, Derb, do you think that Wake Forest goes into Louisville and steals one here? I mean, obviously a
I,
matchup to be
I
looking
think
for
I
here is
think they
Hunter
very well.
Sala.
I think they very well could. I'm not really sure that Louisville has anybody that can go tick for tack with somebody like Hunter Salas.
Yeah. Yeah, you led into right what I was going to say. I think a matchup here is Hunter Salas. Obviously, he's a stud for Wake Forest. Him going up against Chucky Hepburn. That should be a great battle, in my opinion. I really could see this game going either way. It seems almost like a toss-up to me. I was encouraged by what I see with Wake Forest in that Duke game. I don't know about you, but they
Yeah,
really had their chances there.
yeah. Not everything can always go your way, and I feel like a lot of them went Louisville's way lately. So I feel like they're probably due for what most people consider disappointment. And I think this
Mm.
Wake Forest game has a good potential to be there.
Yeah, they're definitely riding a hot streak. I guess if you do want to play the metrics game and let that factor into your decision, Louisville averages around 80 points a game. That's 13 more than Wake Forest that averages around 66. So Wake Forest has also been a little bit shaky defensively at times. So Louisville, they like to shoot threes. I mean, we saw when they played in high-profile games like the one against Kentucky, they got dang near 33-point attempts up. So that's kind of the MO that Pat Kelsey's building there. I wonder if maybe they're just going to get hot. I mean, Rain Smith, he's been playing insane lately. I kind of wonder, with it being the home court and the fact that they're just playing such quality basketball right now, it may be hard for Wake Forest to overcome.
Yeah.
But I could also, I see your case with Louisville being due for one. And I'm assuming you're rolling with Wake Forest in this game, aren't you?
Wow. This was a tough one. This was honestly almost worse than the Tennessee and Kentucky game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll go Wake Forest.
ESPN's matchup predictor, they currently have Louisville favored 75% to 25% Wake Forest. This feels more like a 60-40, 50-50 game, if you ask me.
Yeah, that feels like a heavy hand right there compared to what this game's most likely going to be.
They must just be putting a lot of stock into that recent win for Louisville against SMU. I mean, they put up nearly 100 and won by 25. So obviously that was a great result for them. We'll see. I want to go, gosh, this really is a tough one. If it was at Wake Forest, I think I would lean Wake. But with Louisville having the home court here, I think they're just going to continue to ride that hot play that they've been having recently. And with the home court crowd behind them, I think they get a big night out of guys like Chucky Hepburn, Terrence Edwards Jr., Javon Hadley. He's been playing well recently for them as well. Rain Smith in his last 10 games is averaging about 16.8 a game. So they're one of the hotter teams in the country right now, and it's really hard for me to kind of pick against them. I think if they do ultimately fall, it's going to come down to a guy like Hunter Salas or Cameron Hildreth just going nuclear and breaking Louisville fans' hearts. But I'm going with the Cardinals here.
Yeah, Kentucky was Louisville's last loss, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. I think. Let me double check on that, but I believe you're right because they've won a lot of games recently in conference play. I'm trying to think. They have. Let's see here. Schedule pulled up. Yep, last loss was the UK on December 14th. Since then, they've ripped off wins against Florida State, EKU, UNC, Virginia, Clemson, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Virginia, and SMU. So they are definitely on a heater here. And Rain Smith just had a 30 ball last game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way, but I think I'm going to go ahead and switch my pick back over to Louisville.
You're not standing on business with the Demon Deeks.
I'm not standing on business.
All right,
I do think Wake Forest very much has potential to win, but Louisville's just had a lot going right for them right now, and it's hard to bet against that.
Yeah, I mean, we made a whole video on them. You weren't able to be on that one, but Blake Smith proclaimed the Cardinals as Final Four good. Do you believe that or no?
That feels like a heavy jump.
I think they're more. I said it on the video.
16.
Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Sweet 16 kind of seems like a safe ceiling. But hey, I mean, if they get the right matchups, anything can happen. But I mean, Blake, he's been all in on Louisville this year. He loves the way they're playing. I can't speak for him, but if he were here with us right now, I think he'd be picking Louisville. But transition away from Louisville and on to Louisville's former coach, actually. The top 15 St. John's team is taking on Georgetown on the road tomorrow night at 6:30. Georgetown and Ed Cooley obviously just came off of a loss to Providence this weekend. St. John's, I believe they weren't in action Saturday, if I remember correctly. I'm going to double check on that one. I know they had the close win against Xavier recently, and they do have, let's see here, double checking. Yeah, their last game was against Xavier, and they won in overtime. And that was a good game. I watched that one pretty closely. But who do we go with here, Derb? You going with the Red Storm, or are you going to take Ed Cooley and Georgetown in the true road environment there?
Nah, I think I'm going to rock with St. John's here.
St. John's. Yeah, that's not really a crazy pick by any means. I mean, St. John's, they're having a really good year. Rick Pitino getting them back in the top 15. That's a hell of a statement for them. They've got a lot of guys that are cooking for them right now. R.J. Lewis, most notably, 17 points a game, 6 boards on the season. Zuby Ejiofor, he's averaging around 14 a game. He's been a stud for them. I think this is going to be one where St. John's just wins comfortably. But while we're on the subject of the Big East, we've obviously noted the struggles of UConn recently, and it's really UConn's starting to fall behind in the Big East race overall. I believe they're sitting at 4th right now, if I remember correctly, and St. John's, they are currently in 2nd with Marquette. So do we think that who in the Big East is the best, St. John's or Marquette? Those are the guys sitting at the top right now. UConn is still behind Creighton, and they're sitting in the 4 hole. I kind of lean towards Marquette because I think they've got a lot of dudes on that team. Cam Jones, most notably, but
yeah, I think I'm going to lean with Marquette for right now. Just I'm checking the notes real quick to make sure I'm looking at the right one real quick. Yeah, Marquette. They've got some dogs. The last couple of years. Yeah, I don't know where they keep getting these guys from. Last year it was Kolick was an absolute dog. They've got Cam Jones, so they're stepping into that role this year, and they just continue to build on what's been success throughout the years. They're just cooking right now.
Yeah, they are. They're sitting at 17-3 right now. They're riding the hot hand with Cam Jones, but St. John's is on a 6-game win streak, so kudos to them. But transitioning back over to the SEC, tomorrow night we've got Texas A&M, the number 13 team in the country. They just took a massive blow, losing a 22-point lead at Texas. Tremont Mark had the game winner. Wade Taylor almost nailed in a half-court shot that would have won the game. Heartbreaking end there for Aggies fans. Oklahoma, a team that rode into conference play undefeated, but is really kind of struggling as of right now. They did pick up a win against Arkansas on Saturday, so we will give them credit for that. But they really haven't had their non-conference success translate over towards SEC play yet. They've only got 2 wins, sitting at 2-4. Do we think that they go into Texas A&M and steal one? I mean, there's obviously some dudes on that Oklahoma team like Jeremiah Fears, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to overcome.
I don't think they do. Jeremiah
No.
Fears is a great player, but in SEC play, a lot of opposing teams have done a great job on kind of keying in on him. And,
Mm,
when you kind of limit him, you really limit the Oklahoma team as a whole.
yeah, he did have 16 against Arkansas, though, so we will give him some credit for that one. That was a good performance from him. Arkansas, really, though, they're not really the gold standard for
No.
competition right now, not whatsoever. Jalen Moore, he's having a good season as well. He's averaging close to 18 a game. I definitely think Texas A&M is a safe pick here. They're obviously hurt after that loss against Texas, and they're coming into their home spot. It feels like a get-right spot here. Wade Taylor, Zurich Phelps, and all those guys, just top to bottom, they've got more talent than Oklahoma. But in the SEC, I mean, you can't take anything for granted, and
No.
we see teams get upset every day in that league. So, if you told me Oklahoma went and stole one, I would not be shocked. But I'm just going to lean on the
No.
safe bet.
I wouldn't be stunned. But, Texas A&M has been a pretty solid team this year, and at home, Reed Arena, it's no joke, as we've
No.
seen. So
Yeah, Reed Arena, I don't know how much it's going to be popping for an Oklahoma game, but historically in past years of the SEC, it has been a pretty raucous environment. But moving on to the ACC, transitioning over to the Atlantic coast, we've got North Carolina. They're going to Pittsburgh tomorrow, Durb. Both of these teams,
Pittsburgh.
not even going to let me get it out. You just going straight to Pittsburgh, huh? Right. It's at Pittsburgh. So I definitely think that the home court kind of favors them in that regard. UNC, I mean, we've talked at length about their struggles. So I think that I want to pick North Carolina just because they haven't had a whole lot go right for them this season. But I'm like you. I'm kind of leaning towards Pittsburgh in this spot. I just don't like this Carolina team.
I would say that this Carolina team just ain't that great. And, Caleb Wilson ain't suiting up for him tomorrow. So
No. And RJ Davis, I mean, you never know what you're going to get from him at this point. It's just kind of on again, off again for him.
Maybe they'll get something out of Cade Tyson.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed for a while now. Pittsburgh, I will note, they're putting up close to 80 a game, so their offense is kind of humming there a little bit. North Carolina, I mean, there's so many holes on this team we've talked about. The front court is just not there. RJ Davis is only shooting 29% from three so far this season. Ian Jackson, though, over the last couple of games for Carolina, he's been hooping. He's starting to insert himself into lottery conversations, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know he had that huge poster. Was it a game or two ago? I remember seeing that everywhere.
Yeah, he definitely put him on a poster in that one. I believe it was about 2 games ago because they just came off the win against Boston College on Saturday at home. How that was a game is beyond me. Boston College is terrible. They're genuinely just a bad basketball team there. But I think I'm rolling with Pitt here. I'm like you. I definitely don't like what I've seen out of North Carolina this far, and it's hard to see things getting better. Do we think that this season goes bad enough? I've asked this question to others that have been on. You haven't had a chance to get to answer it. I'll let you take a stab at it. Do we think that this could get bad enough to where Hubert loses his job, or did Caleb Wilson save him some grace going into next season?
I hope he loses his job. And then Caleb Wilson can learn kitty cat.
That's true.
No, honestly, I have no idea. Hubert Davis has had a decent season or two there in North Carolina, but as far ever since he replaced Roy Williams, they've not been phenomenal by any means.
No, not at all.
He's a slightly better version of Mike Woodson, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, Mike Woodson's probably going to be unemployed soon. We just did a video on him as well, me and Blake. That'll be out soon. But yeah, Hubert, he definitely hasn't really bought any love with North Carolina this year. Rough sailing for them, and I don't see it getting much better. I think they're firmly out of the tournament for now, and I don't see them getting in. But transitioning over to Gonzaga, a team we haven't talked about in a little bit, they get a rematch with Oregon State, which is a team they just fell to a couple of weeks ago. Uh, there's not really a whole lot to unpack in terms of this matchup because we have seen it unfold once already. But Gonzaga gets them on their home court this time. Do we think they get their lick back?
So this is at the Kennel, isn't it?
Yes, this is at the Kennel.
Yeah, I would say it was a close game there at Oregon State. So I would say that Gonzaga goes ahead and pulls this one out.
Yeah, Gonzaga, they're kind of in a similar spot last year where they're just looking for quality wins to get. I remember last year they came into Kentucky kind of desperate for a quad one win. And as of right now, with the stumbles they've taken, the resume, it's not looking too good for them. I mean, they've taken the loss to Oregon State, obviously. They took that loss to Santa Clara recently, too, which was really a head scratcher. And they do have a win against Washington State, if you want to call that a quality win. But in the conference that Gonzaga's playing in, Durbin, it's just really hard to kind of stack up resume wins with the quality of competition over there.
Yeah, Gonzaga is very heavily reliant on non-conference games, and this year's non-conference games weren't too kind to them. So it's kind of hard to really just build much into that right now.
Yeah, they whiffed on the UConn and Kentucky game. They lost to West Virginia, I recall. They boat raced Indiana, which, I mean, isn't much of a feat this year with the way they've been playing. And they obviously wrecked Baylor in that one game that obviously Baylor hasn't had the season that you'd like to see if you're Scott Drew. But I think I'm taking Gonzaga here in the home spot. Transitioning back to the SEC, this is getting into the Wednesday action. Auburn, they're coming off that huge win against Tennessee, and now they're traveling to LSU and taking on the Tigers. Now, LSU is currently sitting at 12-7, kind of, I guess you would say, one of the bottom feeders of the SEC. They do have the home court behind them in this one, but Auburn has not been fazed by any of that so far this season.
No.
And I can't imagine that's going to change in this game.
Yeah, no, we've discussed it before. There's no easy nights in the SEC. The SEC is absolutely loaded this year. But Auburn looks like a whole new animal. Even when they had that down and dirty game with Tennessee this past week, they're still able to pull out the win and solidify themselves as the best team in the country. So I don't imagine they skip a beat going into Baton Rouge.
Yeah, and the fact that they were able to get that win in the fashion that they did, I think you're kind of more used to seeing Auburn having high-scoring affairs and just kind of, outlasting teams. Their offense is so star-studded, and they've got defensive playmakers as well. But Tennessee, we mentioned in the preview for Kentucky, they played the style of game that they wanted if you were going into Neville Arena. And Auburn just simply outclassed them and made the plays down the stretch. Miles Kelly had that three that kind of sealed the deal. But it was also really encouraging to see the reintegration of Janai Broome just go so effortlessly. Like usually when you're used to playing without a guy for a couple of games, you kind of have an identity that you rely on. And it's hard to get said individual factored back in. But he didn't skip a beat in that game on Saturday at all.
Yeah, this Auburn team is more than legit at this point. And if anybody says otherwise, you probably don't need to be talking to them.
I think it's easy to say that Auburn and Duke kind of stand alone as the title favorites, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was going to say, I would say Auburn is pretty far ahead of Duke, but then Duke did have that win versus Auburn.
Yeah.
Auburn's quality of wins on the road and neutral courts and everywhere else is just their resume is pretty much unlike nobody else's in college basketball right now.
Yeah, and I mean Duke, they're only getting better as every game goes on. I mean, they're a completely different team than they were even when they beat Auburn. So that's kind of a statement as to what they've been doing. I think that when you think about who the contenders are right now, there's a tier that has Duke and Auburn alone, and then there's kind of the teams that are next up. I'd say the Iowa States, the Alabamas, maybe make the case for Florida and Tennessee in that group as well. But there's a lot of quality teams in the top 10 and beyond in college basketball, really. It just seems like those two stand alone right now. But Auburn, I think they win comfortably against LSU. Not really much to think about when it comes to that one. I think the only hope if you're an LSU fan, if you're wanting to cook up an upset, is you got to get Auburn's D plus game and you got to be on your A game. Cam Carter got to make shots, and Auburn, I really think it would just take a complete collapse for any kind of scare to happen there. But moving over to the Big 12 on Wednesday, a team that I talked about in the opening segment of the podcast, Houston. I'm all in on Houston right now. I mean, it doesn't have to be said where I stand on this group. They're going to Morgantown against a West Virginia team that's been really kind of confusing this year. I mean, they have some statement wins. Obviously, they went into Allen Fieldhouse and they won, but then they also kind of have some head scratching losses. They just lost by double digits to a Kansas State team that really went out and spent money in the portal for guys like Coleman Hawkins, and it hasn't amounted to much success for Jerome Tang. They also took the L to Arizona State prior to that game. So a 2-game losing streak for West Virginia here, and now they bring in a Houston team that's coming off the high of all highs, beating Kansas and Allen Fieldhouse in that double overtime battle. Do we think that West Virginia stands a chance here?
I mean, with somebody like Javon Small, who can always take over a game, you always have a chance. But I would say Houston wins this one pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, Javon Small, he's kind of the guy that makes that team go. Darian DeVries, he's done a good job so far with this group in year one. But I will mention, they did play at Houston a couple weeks back, and it wasn't very close. I think West Virginia ended up winning by about 16 or something. But, yeah, I mean, you look around the resume for West Virginia, they've got wins against Iowa State and Kansas, but then they get blown out by Arizona. They lose to Kansas State, like I mentioned. It's just a very hard team to get a read on. And I just don't really – I don't know how to read this team, Derb, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they're like I said, a lot of it does go down to Javon Small. You know, he's playing his best basketball. They're a hell of a team to play. And I said a lot of it comes down to Houston just playing their best ball of the season right now. No other way to put it. And when you've got one team that's finally figured out who and what they are, and one team who you don't really know what you're going to get, I'm going to tend to lean with the devil I know instead of the one I don't.
Yeah, and I mean, we mentioned earlier, Houston's had the emergence of some bucket getters for them. Jawan Roberts, obviously, L.J. Cryer, Joseph Tugler. He's been a good defensive piece for them. And then you got guys like Emmanuel Sharp and Malik Wilson who made the big plays down the stretch against Kansas. Milos Uzon, he's been great as well. This is just a quality team top to bottom. Kelvin Sampson hasn't played really good basketball after they really got kind of forgotten about heading out of non-conference play. Like I mentioned, I think that they're definitely a title contender. I'm really looking forward when it comes to Houston. I'm obviously picking them to win in this game because I'm looking ahead now. But on February 22nd, they're going to be playing against Iowa State, and they get them in their building. That is going to be some great TV. I'm very excited for that matchup because I think that could very well determine the course of the Big 12 title race.
Right now, it's Houston and Iowa State and everybody else in the Big 12.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion.
No, yeah, 100%. I mean, when you look at the standings in the Big 12 right now, it's obviously Houston alone up there. Iowa State sits at 7-1, but Arizona, they're sitting at 7-1 too. That's why they need this win tonight against Iowa State, because this could be a statement game for them if they really want to put themselves back into serious conversations nationally and in the Big 12. They've got a chance to come out and make that known tonight. But I don't know. I love that Iowa State team too much. I just don't really see them stumbling, but we'll find out. And moving over to the Big Ten on Wednesday night, we've got a game between Wisconsin that's taking on a Maryland team that just went on the road and beat Indiana. Mike Woodson spotted after the game not shaking hands with Maryland, so obviously they're coming off the thrill of that win. Rodney Rice with the absolute dagger. The Wisconsin, they're coming in ranked 17th, and an interesting stat I saw on them earlier today. They're averaging offensively 82 points per game, and in comparison, the Final Four squads that they had in 2014, 2015, and 2013, 2014 averaged 71 and 73 points per game, and that stat comes courtesy of John Rothstein. So, Derb, if you look at the history of Wisconsin and the teams that they tried to be in the past, they're really exceeding expectations, and they're on an encouraging course here, sitting at 16-4 with a high-powered offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if they're as good as those teams were back in the day, but obviously stats don't lie. So you obviously got a good team going on. And Wisconsin was one of those teams coming into the year. People weren't really sure what to expect. At least I wasn't, because you had to replace guys like AJ Storr in the portal and stuff like that. So for them to be able to come back and build the team that they've got to be, I feel like contenders is a strong word, but legitimate threats to just about everybody they play is a huge thing.
Second weekend threats, I would say for sure. When it comes to Wisconsin, I'm not sure how exactly deep I could see them going, but it's a quality team. You think they get it done against Maryland on the road? Maryland, really, I think they should have been ranked in the top 25. The fact that UConn's in the top 25 and Maryland isn't is a disgrace because Maryland absolutely blew out Illinois, and then they get a quality road win. I mean, say what you want about Indiana, getting the win at Assembly Hall, that's still something to hang your hat on. So I think that this is a tricky game for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I can't. What is the name of shoot? The name of that one Maryland big man. I can't remember his name to save my
Derek
life.
Queen.
Yeah, Queen. That dude is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say Wisconsin is obviously going to have their hands full with him. And, with it being at Maryland, I could pretty well see them winning that game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough spot because I really do like Wisconsin and what John Tonji's been doing for them this year. But I think Maryland, I just like them in the home spot. Derek Queen, I feel like they're going to have their hands full. So we'll see how that goes. But I think Maryland ends up winning that one. And then on Wednesday night as well in the SEC, we've got Alabama going to Starkville, Mississippi State. Now, this is a game, one of the games of the week that I'm looking forward to a lot. Josh Hubbard versus Mark Sears, that is going to be a battle of all battles. Mark Sears, we did have that incident on the weekend where he didn't play in the second half, and he was
Yeah.
visibly upset on the sideline. We made a whole video about that. What do you think about that, Derb? You didn't get to talk about it.
Well, it's always certainly something when, your star player appears to be crying on the sideline. Whether that be him being upset with something in the moment or just, being a competitor. You wonder what the cause of it was. Was he just upset that he wasn't playing to his standard? Or was there more behind the scenes? Just there's a lot more questions than answers.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in terms of this game, I think that I'm assuming there's nothing going on behind the scenes, which I don't want to speculate. I mean, I don't think there's anything going on behind the scenes. Nate Oates, he made some pretty direct comments, just basically saying I played the guys I needed to play to win, and Mark wasn't in that equation. But when it comes to this game specifically, I do worry about Mississippi State, even though they do have the home court, because Bama, they just have so much depth. I mean, it's unreal. When you have a guy like Aiden Holloway backing up Mark Sears, who is an outstanding freshman talent, didn't pan out at Auburn, transfers to Alabama. He's having a great year right now. LeBaron Philon, he's a solid freshman talent as well. Chris Youngblood's starting to emerge and hit shots and big time moments for them after being injured for the first part of the year. Then they've got quality big guys. I mean, Grant Nelson, Clifford Amari, and then you got Jaron Stevenson as well. There's just so many guys on this team that can contribute to winning, and Nate Oates is obviously one of the best young minds in college basketball. Chris Jans, though, on the Mississippi State side as well. He's a great coach. He's got a hell of a squad there, besides just Josh Hubbard. I mean, Claudell Harris, he's been a big-time bucket getter in spots. Riley Kugel, the Florida transfer, he provides quality bench minutes as well. I don't know if this game necessarily favors Mississippi State just because of the amount of depth Alabama has. But, I mean, Mississippi State, they've got some quality pieces behind their core guys as well. What do you think about this matchup, Derb? This is a hard one for me to get a grasp on because I could see the Starkville Magic prevailing.
This one is a weird one because obviously I don't think it's a hot take to say Alabama's the better team.
Yeah.
But Mississippi State is a very good team. And when you put them in a home environment like what they've got there, it makes them a great team at times. So I think a lot of it depends on Mississippi State hitting their shots? Is the crowd going as crazy as they can be? Does does Hubbard have his great game? He's had his moments during the season, whether they be good or bad. But he's one of those guys when he's on his best moments. There's really nobody in the country that can do anything about it. You just got to watch back and enjoy the show.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm going with Alabama in this one. There's just too much depth on that team, and with as high as I was on Alabama coming into the season, I feel like I got to stick with my guns here. I saw this squad walk into Rupp Arena and drop 102, so obviously they're not going to be phased by a road environment. At least that's the grip that I get when it comes to this roster.
Yeah, I would also lean Alabama. I wouldn't be surprised necessarily either way, but I do think Alabama is the overall better team. So
yeah, I keep mentioning the theme of SEC standings where it's a pivotal matchup. This is another one. I mean, Alabama, if you want to keep being in that hunt with Auburn, you sit right there behind them at the moment with the one loss, and Auburn obviously running through SEC play undefeated right now. This is a game you want to not get it notched under your belt because Auburn already has the head-to-head against Mississippi State, and then on the Mississippi State side of things, if you want to find your way into that top four and earning a bye in Nashville at the SEC tournament, this is a spot where you want to defend your home court and kind of work towards that. And speaking of other SEC opponents, Texas, they're going to Ole Miss on Wednesday night as well. That's going to be an intriguing one. Texas, I mentioned it at length on the instant reaction, how they came back from that 22-point hole. And now they go to an Ole Miss team that's kind of on the ropes here. They've had some discouraging results recently. I don't think anybody's out on them by any means, but this is a tricky spot for Ole Miss. They are going to be defending the home court, but I could easily see Texas with the talent they have, Trey Johnson and whatnot. It could be a tricky spot for the Rebels.
Yeah, I mean, right now I think I would lean Ole Miss because it is a home game, and Ole Miss is a good team, and they've proven it with some big wins. But at the same time, Texas got punched in the mouth. First Texas A&M, still able to come back and win that game in what you consider heartbreaking fashion for A&M.
Durb, I have some emergency news to deliver to the podcast really quick. We'll continue with this game, but one we already covered, Lamont Butler has just been declared out for tomorrow's matchup against Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yep. You switching your prediction that easy?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge blow for Kentucky because now you're looking at Travis Perry possibly starting, unless they move Jackson Robinson to the one and maybe they roll out a lineup like J-Rob, Owe, Almanor, BG, and Amari. Maybe that's the way they go about things because I don't think you can put Travis Perry in that spot.
Yeah, I think Perry's definitely one of those guys that he's actually not been bad these last couple of weeks. So I want to give him his flowers for being better. But throwing him into a starting environment in a situation like that probably isn't the best recipe for success. So he's probably one of those guys going to just kind of rotate in. Somebody like Robinson needs a break.
Yeah. Had to do some live reporting there, but yeah, I think Tennessee can be pretty heavily favored now. Transitioning back to Texas and Ole Miss, though, you can continue your thoughts with this game. Who do you think's coming out on top?
I want to lean Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, they have had their moments of being a good team, going into Alabama, winning there. And, they've had players have absolutely dominant performances, like Malik Dia, which, again, that Alabama game was phenomenal. And, I think if everything's going right, they can easily be a pretty good game for them. But then again, as you mentioned, Texas has a ton of talent. So we'll see.
Yeah, Texas definitely has talent on that roster. We've mentioned it all the time. Trey Johnson, he had an outstanding performance on Saturday with 30 points. He really carried that team, and then Tremont Mark was set up for the game winner. But, yeah, this is an Ole Miss team that's coming off 2 straight losses. This kind of feels like a get-right spot for them, in my opinion. And, yeah, I just think Ole Miss has a chance to get right here, and I think they do it. But before we tie this podcast up and put a bow on it, we got 2 Big Ten battles on Thursday. Not a whole lot of action going on Friday. I'll get your picks real quick. Illinois goes to Nebraska. Do we see Illinois in a possible upset? No Nebraska magic?
No, I don't think so.
Illinois has been having kind of some issues lately. They had the blowout loss on their home court to Maryland, so it hasn't really been smooth sailing recently if you're an Illinois fan, but they did just absolutely thrash Indiana. So if you're looking for a positive sign coming off of the back-to-back losses where it was Maryland and Michigan State, I think that's a good sign. But yeah, I'm going Illinois in this one. And then lastly, Oregon's traveling to UCLA. What would be a Pac-12 battle in years past is now a Big Ten battle. Do we think Mick Cronin gets one here on the home court, or is it going to be Oregon and Dana Altman?
I guess it depends on if his players are delusional or not.
One of the quotes of the year in college basketball so far.
Man, that might be the one so far. I don't know. This one's a weird one. Oregon started out the year really, really good. Having some marquee wins and looking great. And then UCLA's had their moments of looking decent, and they've had their moments of, I don't even know what that was, I just watched kind of thing. So that's it.
Yeah.
I may want to hear your thoughts on this before I end up making my final pick here. But this is one I said.
Yeah, this
is a weird one.
This is kind of a weird one. I agree with you in that regard. UCLA, they're a hard team to get a grasp on because they'll get a good result like they did against Wisconsin last Tuesday, and then they followed it up and they looked terrible against a Washington team that's really not good. Only got out of that one by 5, and they're just really hard to get a grip on. There's players on that team that Tyler Bilodeau, he's a stud in the post. Eric Daly Jr., he's pretty solid as well. But there's just not a whole lot that I like about this team, really. Every time that I've watched them this year, it's been kind of an ugly brand of basketball, and I'm going to go with Oregon here. I like Oregon in this spot.
Yeah,
Oregon's also coming off of an upset loss to Minnesota, so I think they're going to be coming out ready to punch somebody in the mouth.
Yeah, playing angry, as you put it.
Yeah,
I think I would definitely rock with Oregon on this one. They've proved a little more so far this year. With their big wins, even though they've had some of their moments where they didn't look the best, I still think overall they are the better team in the situation. So.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for sure over there in the Big Ten. We'll keep our eyes on it. But, yeah, that's about all the action for this week, Derb. We got the late news there that Lamont's going to be out for the big-time matchup on Tuesday.
Travis 30 bomb.
And I'm looking at the injury report a little bit more. I actually got a text that popped up on my laptop saying that Lamont's out. Andrew Carr is listed as questionable, so he's not ruled out yet. If he does play, even with the loss of Lamont, does that change anything in this game? I just feel like you're really going to be hurting from that loss of the floor general that is Lamont Butler.
Yeah, if you're Kentucky, you're definitely not feeling great about it. But at this point, it may be what's best for you. Because, like I said, Lamont's coming off 2 pretty rough games, which is, I'm assuming, due to injury. So, it's one of those things. Maybe give him a game or 2 to get right and then focus on what comes after this game.
Yeah, and what comes after this game is a very big one. So we got a video coming up that we'll tease for the listeners there. Be sure to be looking out for that one. But Derb, great talking ball with you as always. We'll be back for some instant reactions throughout the week and the weekend preview coming up. But for now, I think we've done our due diligence here. Luke Tackett, Dylan Durbin, the Full Court Trap Pod, which was the 1-1 zone tonight, signing out.